Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Journey to Kingdom Hearts 3, Part 48. We're taking a break from the Critical Run to do a discussion video again, this time talking about Coded.
Recoded, coded, whichever you want to prefer. Also, before we go any further, I should also say that when tomorrow ends up being complete, we're filming this on December 22nd. When the 23rd passes, we'll have exactly 1 month until the release of Kingdom Hearts 3.
Excitement abound. So, let's get started. Coded. Coded, to sum it up, is the most unimportant, yet also very important of the Kingdom Hearts games post-2. Well, maybe
If I
not the
had
most important post-2, but very important.
if I had to classify coded in such a way, I think the way I'd classify coded, I think for Days, I said Days is the most irrelevant game. I think coded is the most relevant game.
Yeah, oh, hang on. At least I'm getting my water. At least with Days, you can kind of think of it as like a little prequel to two. So it's like, oh, some nice Roxas stuff here. Cody didn't mean anything until like three now coming out. Like, oh, now Cody means something.
Yeah, and now let me give a little clarification here. From the way Joel and I are talking about this, it probably makes it sound like we completely hate coded. That's not the case, at least not with me.
I quite like Cody too. I like its
I
aesthetic.
I find Coded really fascinating. I like it. Now, let me clarify the game. I really like the game. From a gameplay standpoint, I find Coded to be probably the most varied of any of the Kingdom Hearts franchise. Each world you go through has a different style of gameplay, a style in which you have to get used to certain segments that play very differently from the previous. So for that, it keeps you going. There's enough there to keep you going. There's enough there that's always keeping you guessing as to what you're going to be doing next. Now you remove the gameplay out of that, and you're left with the cutscene library that we get in the 2.5 HD remix.
Right. Which I'm kind of
And
used to at this point because I only watch the cutscenes.
um, and I feel bad for you, Joel, because I started watching some of these cutscenes, and I'm like, oh Lord. Um, I don't know if it's that these cutscenes, if it just doesn't translate as well to cutscenes, or if there was something wrong here in execution, which could very well be the case, because there's a lot of things here where I'm like, Nomura really seems to be taking the easy way out in a lot of these, because I don't know how much you remember about this, Joel, but when Coded originally came out,
I
or
remember
was
how it was like this game thing that came out every few months, and you get a little update.
And yeah, Coded was once a mobile phone game. Then the DS version came out, and that made it more accessible. Then when we learned it was going to be included in the HD collection, he said there was going to be more battle-oriented cutscenes in this.
Right. I remember that.
And here and there, I guess, but I feel like that was his way of trying to draw more people to that.
Hmm.
I mean, let's you want to be honest, Joel. The reason any of you should watch Code is mainly for the extra cutscenes.
What?
I feel like the main reason anyone should really watch Coded, or at least these cutscenes, is for the extra cutscenes that really tie into 3.
Yeah. Oh boy. So okay, I thought about this last night. Not last night, yesterday, and I realized something, Cole. It's a little weird epiphany I had.
Okay.
Coded is the third of an unofficial trilogy that is Birth by Sleep, Days, and Coded.
hmm
But it's essentially it's a trilogy that essentially says, "Hey, you know how one Chain of Memories and two tell this nice little story about three kids who are trying to get home?
Yeah.
This trilogy saying, oh yeah, well there's a bunch of bigger stuff going on in the background the whole time. We're just telling, and now we're gonna finally tie it in Dream Drop Distance."
And you know what's sad, Joel? The game immediately after Coded is Dream Drop Distance.
Exactly. Um. Yeah. Oh boy. Um.
I'm gonna go ahead and just say my thoughts on the cutscenes in general. I feel like the voice acting is good. I feel like King Mickey's voice actor is a lot better here than he was in previous. He's really doing a much better job, and I feel like he's getting better and more inclined into this type of role for
Well,
Mickey.
it was
So
a
I'm really
few
glad for
years.
that.
It was a few years later, so they
True.
probably had more time for training and
Yeah.
more
Um,
experience.
and I like most of the voice actors' performances.
Haley Joel
That,
Osment's pretty good, I thought.
mhm,
The
yeah.
Thor's pretty well good, I thought.
David Gallagher is pretty good
Well,
as
David Gallagher
Riku.
is always good. Like
Yeah,
I don't
David
think
Gallagher is always good no matter what he's in.
I've never had a problem with David Gallagher. He's always good.
Really, voice acting is not the problem here. I think the big issue I have with this is I'm like, the thing with Coded, if we're talking strictly the DS version, I don't know how much you know the DS version's gameplay, Joel. The DS version has very similar presentation style akin to that of the Game Boy Advance version of Chain of Memories.
Interesting.
So it had virtually no voice acting, meaning a lot of it is just the ambiance of the scenes, the settings, the music, and you get to fill in the performances based on that.
Gotcha. Okay.
So when you're trying to pull that and put it in a cutscene library, when you pull the gameplay completely out, you're basically left with a lot of exposition that is sometimes told well, but at the same time isn't always presented in a way that makes it well worth to really devote time to, if you catch my drift.
All right, I can see that. I mean, Days has that problem too. It's just the three of
Yeah.
them sitting in the tower eating ice cream
Yeah, the funny thing I feel
all
like with Days
the
though, and
time.
actually actually I should make this clarification about Days. I feel like Days has some of the most bland gameplay out of any Kingdom Hearts franchise, and I feel like what makes that game any remotely way interesting is the story.
But it's just them sitting in the tower all the time.
Yeah, which is funny because Coded has this problem and opposite where you give it this story, but you take all the fun stuff away from it.
I mean, I don't know how you would tell to do this, Cole, without because you want everything to, because everything should be accessible, especially
Yeah, of
considering
course.
3 is gonna be the one that's gonna tie it all together.
You know what I would have done here, Joel?
What?
I probably would have gone for a more episodic format.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the way it's told is way, way too stretched. Think of it like your fan fiction, for example. Think of it more condensed into segments like that. I feel like for something like this, it would have worked a lot better, like
You mean
chapter one.
how I have essentially, let me count, 1, 2, 3, 4, good 5 chapters just about Wonderland.
Yeah, or even less than that, like a certain amount of chapters dedicated to a certain world. Then we move on, and it's in a chapter-like format. And you know what would be funny, Joel?
What?
It would be told like a book, like the journal we're dealing with.
That'd be funny. It's funny. What's funny, Cole, about my fanfic? Just to derail for a little bit. Um, I've always had my idea where I wanted to make the coded era very episodic, like almost arcy. Like the first
Mhm.
arc would just be Sora and gang home, just dealing with that, and then another arc maybe, then another arc just dealing with more important stuff, and then near the end, that's when you finally start tying in. Oh, something bigger is gonna happen next.
I feel like that's the way you present Coded in that scenario, and oddly, in a cutscene scenario like this, because as soon as Destiny Island starts hitting, I'm like, whoa, 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 something's wrong here, but I can't put my finger on it. And I realized the problem was I'm just being hit with exposition, exposition. And I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, man, I thought getting into Kingdom Hearts 2 out of the eyes of someone else would have been difficult. Imagine trying to get into Coded and that being your first Kingdom Hearts game. Think of how weird that would be, especially in a cutscene setting.
Yeah, I mean, I know I have a friend who says they're gonna watch everything in chronological order, so they're going all the way to Union Cross.
Oh,
I told them to try to do it in release order, but they want to watch it chronologically. So
no, yeah. By the way, this is a public service announcement to anyone who's been watching us long enough. Do not do it in chronological order.
all right, I mean, I warned him, but he wants to do it, so it's his.
No, I'm just saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm like, if you haven't been in Kingdom Hearts before, do not do it in chronological order because that's going to give you a really, really weird playing experience when it comes to this
Or
game.
just a watching experience, because I gave him the Kingdom Hearts chronological
That too.
cutscene.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're dedicated, like, nope, I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna do this. I'm going to unless you're dedicated to it, don't do it. If you're casual, then do it release order. If you're dedicated, I can see maybe you want to do it for fun.
Yeah, though I would say if you're dedicated, at least have the games under your belt, or at least have watched them just in release to kind of get a sense of how Kingdom Hearts evolved over time, if you know what I mean, Joel.
Indeed. Um,
Because that's the part of the thing chronological order does not do Kingdom Hearts justice is you kind of don't get that aesthetic and how it evolves over the years.
oh, definitely, especially because Coda kind of goes back to one aesthetic quite a bit.
Which you know what's weird,
I really
Joel?
like that though, but you know me.
You know what's weird?
What?
Um, when they do the simple and clean opening, I'm like, I'm really loving this.
Well, it's simple and clean. Who doesn't love simple and clean?
And then as soon as then we jump away, then we get away from that thematic element and just jump right into and I'm like, okay, oh, what the hell? Actually, you know how we talked about dubbing and writing before, Joel?
Yeah.
Coded has that in a really weird way where at times I feel like it's written well, but other times I'm like, this is written or dubbed really, really strangely.
Yeah, I can't
And
think of a
and
good
and I'll
example though of where I. There's some lines I probably could think of if I remembered.
I'll give you a perfect example.
Okay.
And it's right at the start, and it's when Donald and Goofy are talking about Sora,
Mm-hmm.
and the way they talk about him is very, very strange. They talk about him almost as if he's someone that doesn't really factor into their kind of lives, and I get that on somewhat of an idea, but the way they talk about him just feels kind of detached.
That could be both writing and dubbing a lot. I mean, that could be also be dubbing a lot of the way.
Yeah, because I'm like, this is really bizarre.
But that's the problem with dubbing, and this is where fan fiction kind of comes in again. So we bring in the fanfic. Is when you're reading Kingdom Hearts fanfic, you can kind of, and maybe this is also where you come in with the whole, reading the dialogue via, text box.
Yeah,
And Chain Memories has this too, where you can insert your own inflections.
exactly.
Where as English speakers, this is a Japanese game, so and when we dub things, dubbing is weird sometimes, especially when it's not very well done. There's some really good
Especially.
dubbing there. Now there is good dubbing out there. A lot of the early Showa era Godzilla movies are really well dubbed.
And I'll point out another good dub. Ouran High School Host Club is a great example of a good dub in terms of anime. Now, going off of that, Joel, in terms of bad dubbing, now dubbing typically is
I
done
say Godzilla.
but not only to bring in a more traditional. Actually, you can hear it in English, but also because you have to redub it because a lot of jokes that are done in the Japanese culture don't really translate over to the American culture that we know, the United States culture we all know.
Oh, and the Kingdom Hearts manga. There's some weird stuff in that one too, and I'm gonna find something here to prove my point. Because I really want to talk about this a little bit. I know we're getting off track from Coded, but this is still part of the thing. So, hang on.
And that's another, which is funny because Ouran kind of plays with that whole idea of trying to do Japanese jokes in an English setting, and it works for that setting of a show. But otherwise, dubbing those kinds of jokes in and that kind of speaking just doesn't really translate because that's typically not how people in the United States speak.
Well, okay, so this is this is Donald and Sora's in Wonderland, and Sora's kind of like, hey, I want to help Alice, blah blah blah, and Donald's trying to say, this is a bad idea, and then Donald just says something along this is actual Donald, either Donald's line in the Kingdom Hearts manga. Now these are the scans that you can find online. This is not the actual English translation, which I have back home, so I can't compare what he actually said in my version. But Donald says here, every world is defined by its particular boundaries within which some understands of reality emerges as truths. Two truths cannot coexist, and so from the introduction of foreign boundaries is conflict and chaos spawn. That's why we limit our involvement in local affairs. That sounds like anything Donald would actually say.
No, and that's the weird thing with, and that again, that's why we have dubbing into the mix to make that kind of thing more accessible to an American audience.
Fun fact: in my fanfic, I actually used that line of dialogue, but I actually gave it to the Cheshire Cat because that sounds like something he would say.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, and when you read a fanfic, you can kind of, Sora can talk well, not normally, but more what you think English speakers sound like. His inflections, the way he talks. Sometimes I see it where Sora sounds like an average American teenager. And swear words appear. There are actually swear words in the Kingdom Hearts manga. Donald swears, and it's funny.
Yeah. But anyway, getting back on point, stuff that Joel is bringing up, and also that I'm bringing up, it's those kinds of things that make watching this kind of very, very strange because it's not a written format. We're seeing it with the actual actors and the actual things they wrote for them to say. So it kind of comes across as kind of jarring. And it's things like that that really take me out of the viewing experience.
Well, again, we talked about this in Days. This Coded was part of the B team. This is
Yeah.
and
Remember, people, and again, I have to make this point like I did in Days. Birth by Sleep, Days, and Coded were announced back to back with each other. They were all three announced at the same time.
I really want to know the production history. Like,
I do too. I really, really want to know the production history of Coded and Days.
from both a story perspective and a game perspective, because like you wonder if Nomura was there's almost a question of if Nomura was dealt a bad hand in delivering his already probably insane story.
Mm,
Because it probably was gonna be bound to be insane no matter what. But it's like
yeah.
because of what he had to deal with was he delivered a bad hand and sort of the way it was presented, that's what hurt it even more than say what the ideas were. Like you almost wonder you and I could have still complained about nobody thing having hearts, but you almost have to wonder if Dream Drop Distance and everything kind of got presented in a better way, would we be complaining about it as much as we are?
No, probably not.
Um, because you see the good elements. I mean, I've shared with you a
Yeah.
friend of mine talking about Dream Drop Distance. I know I'm throwing Dream Drop Distance, but like, and they brought this up with Coded about the Roxas and Sora stuff, and like they love Roxas. Who doesn't love Roxas? So I'm totally with
Hmm.
them. Funny enough, same person was like, they love the Sora Roxas moment, but then they're like, oh, this means nothing because this is Datasaur. He's not going to know any of this.
You know what's sad too, Joel, is that the scene between Datasora and Roxas is actually some of the best stuff in this game.
Oh yeah, I love it. That's actually takes to the next big point. Coded as a story, while both irrelevant and relevant. Ooh, I bet it had some controversy considering this was the first technically post 2 story.
It's funny, Joel, because you think that would be the case, except it didn't, and that's because I truly wonder how many Kingdom Hearts fans actually played Coded.
I mean, I knew about it because I was trying to keep up.
Well, the thing too is that the other thing people have to keep in mind, especially for Kingdom Hearts, has been around for 15 years. But the other thing is it's been switched around on a couple of systems. So not everybody is feasibly going to get every single game for multiple systems. They are probably not. They don't own or are not going to own.
Oh, definitely. I wasn't. I only had the PS2 for years.
So it's kind of weird in that sense. It's almost like Coded kind of just fell under the radar, and people just kind of like, oh yeah, it's there. And like, oh, and then it's like, oh, it's important. Oh.
And what's interesting about it for me. Okay. Sorry, my mom was talking in the background.
That's all right.
Star Trek was on. So you know what's going on in my life, people. Anywho, but because I was really into Birth by Sleep at the time,
Mm-hmm.
I still am, to be fair.
So am I.
And I remember the big thing about Coded was when the secret ending came out, and like Master Xehanort will return. And I'm like, ooh, Master Xehanort's coming back. He's pulling a Voldemort.
And then we got
was
Dream
really
Drop
into Harry-
Distance, and then
Actually, no, I was even still excited because, like, oh, he's pretty much Voldemorting this entire plan. The 13 hearts being his Horcruxes. You have to be a Harry Potter fan, I guess, to be excited about that. There's some similarities. But yeah, that was my big thing, and I like Coded's aesthetic in a weird way. I like the fact that the Final Fantasy elements are so not there, and it reverts back to just the Disney-est. It's the most
which is weird because they're
Disney-est thing.
still there, especially in the game. The Final Fantasy moments are integrated, but they're integrated in a weird Disney way.
It's one of those things where I can never fully explain what I'm complaining about and not sure what I mean because I
Which
always
is
have
is
that
weird.
problem with 2. You know I have that problem with 2. I don't
You know
have it
what's
as much anymore though, to be fair. That's more of a
What's funny is that the game actually takes those Final Fantasy elements and kind of plays homage to them, but does it in like a Disney way. So that's another thing the game has going for it that the cutscenes just don't. Is that you can't really do it in that style.
It's one of those weird things, Cole, and I'm curious if maybe you can help me figure this out. Because, like, I always say, like, oh, 2 feels too. It's. I don't even want to call it Final Fantasy necessarily anymore, because I think that's a disservice to Final Fantasy. I want to say it's forming its own identity, and I'm okay with that. I am okay with that now. I used to, you know me, Cole. I used to have this big thing for 1, and I've really come around on 2 quite a bit in the last few years.
Now 2 still has its issues, as Joel and I have extensively talked about, but
oh, definitely, it's when people say it's probably the best game, though, I actually start to understand why nowadays.
Especially with 3 coming, and you see all those elements that weren't quite there, kind of getting realized in 3. But anyway,
anywho, it's one of maybe you got Maleficent playing a bigger role. It's mostly at Disney Castle. You got Mickey and the gang there. Maybe because there's no organization members, like we're not battling anime-looking dudes anymore.
You know what's weird, Joel? I think I see that. I think I can almost pinpoint what the problem is.
Is it a personal issue? Because I could be just
No. I don't think that. I don't think that's it at all.
Right, because
it's that we're finally deviating to a more Disney aesthetic, but it's so unimportant in the face of the franchise that it kind of just like, oh yeah, that was kind of cool, but then you struggle to say anything more about it. You know what I mean?
No. Elaborate, my friend.
I mean, like, think about it like this. Like, you can play a thing and watch a thing, like, because it looks cool. Take Batman v Superman, for example. Oh, I'm bringing in that can of worms. But anyway, Batman v Superman, a beautiful-looking movie at parts and fun to watch.
At parts.
Coded is fun to play and fun to witness.
Mm-hmm.
But then you think about it in the grand scheme of things.
To be fair, Cole, I like Coded way more than I like Batman vs. Superman.
Well, I know, but bear with me.
Way less issues with it.
But bear with me.
Mm-hmm.
But then you think about, well, yeah, Coded has way less issues than BVS, but then you think about, you're like, how important is this? What is it we're really doing here? Because it's funny what you said a couple days ago, Joel. Maleficent kind of just is broken down to just being a very petty villain that just wants. She's castle hopping. That's what she's been doing for the past how many games
castle
now?
Shopping. Since
and that's
2.
that's what she's doing in this game. Truth be told.
And who knows what she's doing in 3?
And that's kind of the issue. It's like, yeah, we profess we're doing big things, but in this game, we're really not until literally the last probably 30 or like our last third of this game.
And that was only in the added cutscene. They added that in the cutscene with the Book of Prophecy. That was not in the original game.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the whole Roxas stuff, which is even worse because all the Maleficent stuff is in the first 2 acts. Once that's gone, that's kind of – we're focusing more on the Nominate aesthetic and more of that organization aesthetic.
And I want to be perfectly clear. Some of this is just a me problem. And it's not even a problem. I'm just a Disney fanboy who just likes his Disney stuff and his Kingdom Hearts.
But what's sad about this is that I'm almost agreeing with you here, Joel. I don't know if Coded really ever truly knows what it wants to be.
Coded,
you know what I mean?
It's the relevant game because it does all this stuff saying data is important and the world is data, and we're getting more of that data side now because the Keyblade War said we have data. But
the sad part about that is that it took another game to really make this game any sort of way relevant.
To be fair, we don't know what 3 is going to do with it, so...
Well, that's what I mean. 3 and technically Union Cross.
Because Union Cross is making Maleficent's whole plan here kind of important, and then 3, we don't know. We have a few inklings from a trailer that she's doing something. I love that line, by the way, where she goes, "A Keyblade War is upon us." It's just very commanding. I love it.
And what's sad here is like, although all that stuff is great, when we get here, you're like, we needed all that to kind of give this more relevance to make it like, oh, okay, this is where we're leading. Because even through the cutscenes and through the game, I kept thinking to myself, where is this going? I'm not really sure what we're getting at here.
And the sad thing is, I'm trying to drink water. The sad thing is, the Book of Prophecies angle, that's not in the original game.
Yeah.
And you don't really know that. I don't even think when Dream Drop Distance come out, that angle was in it.
No, it wasn't because Union Cross hadn't even come out yet.
No, not Book of Prophecies wise. Just no, the recoded cutscene library. I don't think that had.
No, it hadn't.
Okay, I was right then. Because in Chain of Memories, they do the dream, not Chain of Memories, in Dream Drop Distance, they do pick up on that thread of Maleficent wanting the data for something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very big. And then what I do like about that particular cutscene from Dream Drop Distance is at least there does seem to be like, okay, the wheels are turning, something's going on here, but you still don't know what it is.
Which is the sad part I can give to Distance more than I can Coded. At least in Distance, I can see the wheels are turning. With Coded, I have to have like binoculars to even see the wheels.
It's weird because it almost feels like Maleficent's plan in Coded was an accident. It's like Pete just showed up.
Yeah.
Just to like, I'm gonna cause some. I can't do a Pete voice.
It almost makes them look kind of incompetent.
Mischief, and then I get like, whoops, what's going on here? See, Maleficent who? And then Maleficent comes in this computer world and. She's like, what is this sorcery of computers? And, it's like, maybe I can use this, even though I'm a fairy from a medieval time. I'm going to use computers as part of my plan. Which is always hilarious. I love the fact Maleficent's whole plan involves computers. Cole?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, good. You just went quiet. Like, I love that. So again, that's weird. And it's also weird that Deus Sora's whole thing is to find out about things that Sora himself should probably find out about.
I'm surprised they don't have. Why not just reach out to Sora himself, which I find really strange. You're telling me Nomura really couldn't write a reason to make that work?
Just call Sora up, just say, hey, Can you help us out for a little bit? It's nothing big. Like, Sora's like, sure.
That's the big negative I think this whole thing has going for it, is like, because we're not really playing as Sora, I kind of feel like I'm like, what am I really doing here? I'm living out a re-envisionment of Kingdom Hearts, but not as good of a one as games we've gotten prior. So what is it we're really doing here? And I stay with the game. I stay with it to see where it's going. And the more it keeps going, I'm like, I still don't really know what we're doing here.
Chain of Memories. This is like a worse version of Chain of Memories in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Because even though Chain of Memories and Decoded had that problem of we want to just redo Kingdom Hearts 1 because we go to the same dang worlds again, at least Chain of Memories has a forward momentum and it's the original Sora.
Yeah.
I mean, you can say that Kingdom Memory doesn't matter. It doesn't. It's still kind of important.
I mean, it's important in the flow of the narrative in that regard.
I mean, you could have even asked Riku to show up too. Like, what's stopping Riku from again? Like,
yeah, that's another really. Why not
the stick? But that's
actually, yeah. This should really be Riku's game.
I mean, I think all the side games should be Riku's game. Let's not.
No, I mean just getting Riku to experience Sora's struggles and his story and how it was trying to find him and dealing with the consequences that Riku caused.
Would you have thought maybe you could have kept Data Sora but had real Riku?
Yeah, and have real Riku kind of be the Aizen character, seeing what's going on.
That would have been interesting. Okay.
I feel the more I look at Coded, I'm like, there's so many interesting things you could have done here. And I'm just scratching my head at all the easier narrative and more interesting plot decisions Nomura could have made here that would have been just as crazy, but all the more exciting. So at this point, I'm like, what was Nomura doing here?
This is one of those things where it's like either Nomura didn't know or he was just, look, we need a cell phone game, make something up. The execs up high were like, do something.
Yeah.
I want to do 3. Do something. We need the money.
Yeah, there will be more games. Ching ching.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, this entire, I call it the Coded era because I feel like, because I do like the idea of there should be a gap between 3 and 2.
Me too. Yeah.
Especially because I want like Sora and the gang to like have some downtime.
Yeah. I feel like they kind of need that.
Sora needs to cuddle with his mama after being gone for so long. And Riku's got to deal with his issues.
Well, no, he doesn't have to cuddle with his mother after what happened. His mother needs to ground his ass for like abandoning her for like 2 years.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And No father. Of course, because Sora is one of the king with the Kingdom Hearts. He was born of the Kingdom Hearts. That's what Nomura's gonna do. He can make him an Anakin Skywalker.
Oh God.
So
Anyway.
where is Jesus?
Anyway, we'll talk about that another time. Anyway.
But I do like that. But it's like Datasaur's learning all the stuff that Sora needs to learn about. Why aren't you
he's
Why aren't you learning about Roxas and Shion and the gang and the Birth by Sleep people?
It's such a weird game narrative wise.
Because that should be emotional, and
Yeah.
it means nothing.
No.
Go back to my friend Katie for a second. Katie Corn. Hi, Katie Corn, if you're actually listening. Doubt you are, but hi. Now, that was more impactful in Dream Drop Distance because finally, real Sora meets Roxas
Yeah.
and learns about all that stuff that went down.
For any of you, by the way, I'll go and throw this out there. If any of you really want to experience Dream Drop Distance, just go through the Traverse Town cutscenes and then the World That Never Was cutscenes. That's all you really need.
And maybe watch that Maleficent cutscene, because that's probably really important.
Yeah, that Maleficent cutscenes and all the cutscenes involving the Mark and Mastery exam. Other than that, you don't really need anything else.
It's probably the easiest way to do it. Yeah. But yeah, and you know what's weird, Cole? Coded, I feel like doesn't really even add to the lore that much.
No, it doesn't.
Like at least not until retroactively.
Yeah.
And especially when we're Cross, because that adds a lot to the lore. Which, by the way, when we do that, you should probably watch the cutscenes that aren't in the back cover because there's more stuff to talk about.
Yeah. By the way, we are going to do back cover in January, right before 3 comes out. Also, along with the prologue.
I might try to merge it in with just a Union Cross back cover 2-for-1 deal.
Yeah. We definitely can't do the prologue with that because that would be a little annoying to do because the prologue actually is a game.
Right. But you can always find cutscenes online. That was the prologue for Union Cross.
Yeah, I know.
With the little text things.
Yeah. I'm trying to think about what other than the only real big thing this game adds to lore retroactively even is I guess Dataku and the Book of Prophecies.
Which after the latest Kingdom Hearts 3 trailer, now I'm not sure if it is Dataku anymore. I don't either. I think it might be Replica Who the Darkness.
I hope like hell it's Replica because if it's Dataku, I have no idea what the hell they're doing with him.
Maybe just because he's in the robe, I thought it was Dataku. Like, because Data, and because he was dealing with the data. Now they could be retroactively making Dataku and Replica kind of the same thing.
I would be interested to see how Nomura plays that off.
Because he's dealing with the bugs.
Yeah.
And the bugs are going to be part of the prob of I think of the
gameplay. Yeah.
Big Hero 6 world.
Yeah.
I like Dataku. Like,
I do too. I genuinely do like Dataku.
He's the nicest of the Riku so far.
And what's funny is I even come around on Replica. Granted, it takes Riku's out of the story for that to happen, but I come around on him and actually do like him.
You could have honestly though still have made it real Riku and just because he's mellowed. So it's like, of course he's gonna be nicer because he's mellowed out.
It's a very. I feel like Joel and I are just kind of crapping on this game, but honestly, the more I think about it, I'm like, what is it that I like? I like the aesthetic, like Joel says. I like the voice acting.
I like the fact Maleficent's important.
Kind of, yeah.
She gets to be a villain for 2 acts. That's always nice.
Yeah, for 2 acts, yeah. But then you realize how it really wasn't that important, was it? That sucks.
I did have a joke of someone joking like, "Hey, remember in the first game, Maleficent was like this badass conqueror, and now she's just petty."
And in Kingdom Hearts 1, Maleficent conquered a castle, and the coming game, she shops for castles.
I mean, there's an interesting arc, story-wise, to do of Maleficent trying to find relevance in this growing universe of Kingdom Hearts, and I wouldn't mind that as like a story, but you have to bake it into the series.
I agree. You actually have to do the arc for me to really enjoy it.
Yeah, like because you can, because I feel like two kind of tried that but didn't work it.
Yeah.
Where it's like Maleficent's trying to find be relevant again, and she just can't because the organization's way powerful.
I gotta admit, Joe, this video is going a lot longer than I thought it was going to.
I mean, I want to at least. I mean, I don't like doing just 5 minute discussions. I want to at
Well, no,
least.
I thought this would go at least like I thought it would just go for like 20 minutes, but we actually had a lot more to say about this than I thought we would.
You, I Co- coded is also weird because of just how limited it is in scope.
Yes, I feel like that's this game's biggest problem is its scope is so narrow that I have a hard time appreciating what it's trying to do when the scope is so narrow. I have a hard time seeing the grander meanings of it if there are any.
I mean, at least not in the actual game. Retroactively, yeah. Oh, you still here?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm
Okay,
still here.
you're always going to go quiet. Um,
Sorry, people. We've had PTSD after the whole all our streams ending before.
I mean, last time was hilarious. We just did Arnold Schwarzenegger quotes. It was great. Um, but it's probably the smallest game of Kingdom
Yeah, it
Hearts.
is.
Even Dream Drop, even though Strange or not, oh, strangely, Dream Drop Distance and Code kind of share that same weird thing as nobody leave the room. Um, but at least Coded, you get with Dream Drop Distance, you get new worlds despite their lacklusterness.
Yeah.
And Coded, you don't leave the castle, you just go to the same places.
Really, the only thing Coded really adds is new gameplay mechanics.
It's weird how Burst by Sleep is still probably the best out of these three,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
story wise and gameplay wise, and even just scope
Yep.
for me. At least for me. Again, there's like a little. It's this weird build up to. It's not even a build up to three. It's a build up to Dream Job Distance, and Dream Job Distance is then the prologue to
Which is funny
three.
because it's still not called the prologue, and we got a game called the prologue.
If you have a game, that's a demo. It's not even a real prologue. It's a demo.
Well, it's a prologue in the sense it's a prologue to 3.
And
It's a demo prologue.
do you fear, Cole, these elements are gonna drag 3 down?
I hope not. I mean, considering Nomura hasn't focused much on it, I doubt it.
Hey, what do you mean he hasn't focused much on it?
I mean, trailer wise and whatnot, like we've seen next to nothing, especially about the coded elements. Actually,
No, I'm just talking about all the stuff we've been talking about in general, everything.
in terms of scope, no, I don't think that will be a problem. Actually, no, I highly doubt scope's going to be an issue. Dubbing, I think, is already more on point with just basing it on trailers and gameplay alone. I think that's on point already. Writing seems on point. Aesthetic seems on point too.
Yeah, and I've kind of come to this conclusion, Cole, that, and this gets into a whole other philosophical thing we'll discuss on the stream later, of like standards for storytelling, and is there a set standard, or does everything create a standard? Like, does Kingdom Hearts have a standard all of its own? And that comparing it to things that are probably objectively better is to some degree unfair.
See, the problem with this concept, I'm going to rope these three together. Yes, I'm actually going to do this. And funny enough, all are owned by Disney. What do you know? Anyway, Kingdom Hearts, Star Wars, and Marvel. It's hard to really talk about standards. With Marvel, it's a bit easier, and kind of with Star Wars because they are movies and on singular pieces. But when you go beyond that, they are in a much greater universe. They are compiled in an actual universe. And before then,
and
movie
Star Wars
wise,
is odder because it's sort of with that started out as like weird artsy thing.
and weirdly enough, Star Wars kind of reinvented that kind of genre, that kind of universe, and that whole sequel really got sequels even more going. So the fact that we have that even more to an extreme now, we're starting to see that focus kind of change a bit. And what is it that people really want? Do they want a universe? Do they just want good storytelling? Do they want both? Do they want just good stories without the universe? Do they want singular stories?
I know some people, man. I've get into the debates of like, I got into one debate with a guy, friendly debate, mind you, friendly debate,
Mm-hmm.
and we were discussing his views of art, and he's someone who thinks And I said I vehemently disagree, but it was a friendly debate. He's a very nice man, or no, guy. I think it was a dude. I think it was a dude. He's someone who was like, I think Last Jedi is both a great film and a great Star Wars film. I think Rogue One is a great Star Wars film, not a great film. And I think, and he also said he thought Force Awakens was a great film, but not a great Star Wars film. It's funny because I always hear about Last Jedi, but never about Force Awakens, so that's always funny. And I was like, I'm not sure if I agree with that, because I always hear that lobby against Last Jedi, and he thinks, Last Jedi is both a great Star Wars film and a great film.
Well, it's funny you bring that up, Joel, because that brings up a whole nother philosophical topic. Is that we are seeing, especially if we're, and yes, I have to bring Last
To be
Jedi
fair,
up
this
into
guy's
this.
kind of biased towards Marvel. He doesn't really like Marvel. He doesn't really think highly of it. So,
But anyway, continuing with Star Wars, we are seeing subjectivity really play more into the Last Jedi more than I ever thought it would, to be completely honest. When I saw the Last Jedi, I'm like, oh, it's a pretty great film. A lot of people didn't agree with me there, and all of us. So I'm like, okay, well, to each his own. But we're seeing. But anytime I go to a Last Jedi video, Joel, I always see someone saying, I wanted this, 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 and I didn't get it. But it's always something different on every single video. It may even be very small, maybe similar details, but they're more unique. And I find that interesting because I'm like, in dealing with movies in like series like this, is that an inherent problem in that format, or is that just where the industry is at right now and people just really don't know what they want from these franchises? And I'm honestly not sure.
I think there's a good thing of people don't know what they want, but they know what they like, but they don't know how to describe what they like.
Yeah.
But
And because that,
I think a lot of audiences just they don't know how to articulate that.
and the other thing too is like, that's the other interesting word, is trying to define it by audience, because that's a really hard thing to really define, because you really can't. Because what does an audience really mean? The people that go in to watch the movie, where do they go? In that theater, in theaters? If we go from it like that, then that's at an inherent disadvantage, because a lot of people who go into separate theaters sometimes are looking for different things entirely, sometimes living in different regions. So if we pull it back from an audience standpoint and we think of it as an industry standpoint, you also have the added thing of, well, how do we get those people in the seats, and how do we get them to watch the movie when they want certain things that just aren't in the movie, that we aren't validating for them? So it's one of those things where you're like, do we please people or do we just make money?
Or
Just
make art.
Exactly. And you can apply that easily with Kingdom Hearts as well.
I can agree. I can definitely agree to that for sure. And I mean by make art, I mean, I make a Star Wars film, and it's like, this is my vision for a Star Wars movie. This is not this is where we get a little auteur theory here. Which I am which I'm not for, but I definitely like to think of a good, strong, creative team of like, or this is our vision, if it's multiple people, for a Kingdom Hearts or Star Wars movie / game. We're not taking any input. We have this vision, we got this goal, and we're gonna go for it. We don't care about the money.
Actually, Joel, I'm glad you said that, because say what you will about the Nomura, he has vision. Yes, especially in a world today where we're trying to do more stuff, we're trying to get diversity, and we're trying to do more stuff with a lot of different concepts that people maybe aren't used to. And I love that we're doing that. But I also feel like in the process, we're losing the vision for a lot of those things. We're kind of just streamlining some of those to the point where I'm like, okay, I get you want to do that, but we're not really putting much vision behind that. And that's kind of what made these things pop to begin with.
Although it's always interesting with things that have vision get praise, and then you get Last Jedi, which had vision, and then it gets split down the middle. You'd think, or at least that's what Twitter would tell you. I think of other movies. Here's some 21st century movies that I think of that have quote unquote the vision. Logan. I mean, I put the bad ones too. Batman vs Superman. Let's see, Last Jedi. I never thought I'd put those two in the same room. Let's see another good movie. Winter Soldier. I'm gonna put Winter Soldier. Oh, I think Cole lost. Oh shoot, did I lose Cole? I think I did. Hang on. I just lost Cole here. Just a second, folks. Just a second. Uh, Thankfully, I can just combine these two. So we are back. Begin. We're back, folks. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties. If you hear a little cut.
Basically, Joel's internet hates us, so, and I know for a fact it was not my internet. So anyway,
Yeah. So what I was saying, 21st century movie with Vision. I put Logan, Batman vs Superman, Last Jedi, Winter Soldier, Man of Steel to a certain extent. Never said these were good movies. All these were good. All these aren't always good movies. We'll let you decide.
I'll give another one. Call Me by Your Name.
That's a good one. I'm thinking more franchises that have Vision, but yeah.
True.
I'm gonna say the Godzilla 2014 movie, the new one coming up. That's a bit though. They'll have a bit more franchisey kind of elements to them. I would say Force Awakens. That's a very Abrams-ish movie.
But anyway, so if we keep with Vision, that means we have more to work with.
Right. If you don't believe in pure auteur theory, that's fine. I believe in more of a collective nature.
Yeah, but that being said, auteur or collective regard, there is still a vision, whether it be on a collective level or on an individual level. So, but now sometimes on a collective level, those visions clash. But sometimes that's how we get really great art. Sometimes that's how we get really great consumer products.
Right, but I think our point was. Is it fair? Do we judge them based on what they are, or do we judge them like? Do I judge Kingdom Hearts 1 with just its brethren, of other Kingdom Hearts games? Because
the funny thing is, Joel, if we try to look at it from both, if we try to look at Coded from both aspects, if we look at it on its own and then the grander scheme,
I'm not saying Coded is a better thing because of it. I'm just saying
no, but I'm saying regardless of how we look at it, Coded is still either average or under par because. Even so, it's made only a little bit of its stuff is really made relevant in the end. So no matter how we judge it, there's still not a lot to really judge, if you catch my drift.
Oh, I agree with that completely. I'm just saying, especially when we get to 3, because 3's coming up. Because 3's already, because of all this, is going to have a very weird plot. But do we judge the plot based on do I judge a plot of Kingdom Hearts 3 to say Arkham Asylum? That's a good plot for a video game. That's a good.
I mean, you can judge it. You can compare it and judge it depending on narrative structure and just how well it's told, whether things flow properly, whether things make sense in the context they're telling it. I mean, general story rules still hold true for most storytelling, except when you subvert said rules. Now, that being said, there are always going to be certain games that people gravitate to more than others.
Of course, but I'm saying is it fair to say, well, Kingdom Hearts 2 story isn't as good as Arkham Asylum? Well, no, because, of course, for one thing, they would agree with that. I think Arkham Asylum is a better story.
Yeah, me too.
But, is that fair? Because Kingdom Hearts is kind of a weird thing. It's always kind of convoluted.
Yeah, but the issue is comparing it to Batman, which in another weird way is kind of its own weird thing.
Well, comics are weird. Well, everything.
So that's the other thing. Trying to do direct comparisons other than just on a direct story level is at an inherent disadvantage because there are always aesthetically and narrative differences that aren't going to always line up.
I've once made this weird. I remember doing my Infinity cast when I reviewed Infinity War with the gang, and the first thing I started was, and I remember because we had some issues with the story and. I wanted to play a little devil's advocate. I forgot what the issues were. I think it had something to do with Gamora, and Thanos and their toxic relationship. That was a big issue. I remember, and I remember saying, how fair is this to just compare this to a movie because this isn't just a movie. This is a culmination of 10 years of Marvel movies that have been building up to this day. And they are very, very, and they are not gonna hold your hand. They are like, if you didn't watch those 10 movies, then too bad for you. We built here. We built up to this moment.
Which is funny, Joel, because I always hear that, especially when I was in some literature classes, I heard a lot of flack from professors about Marvel movies because they didn't hold true traditional format. But the more and more I go through college, and the more I have other professors that kind of really really enjoy that idea of that culmination. I think to myself, I think what we see in that regard is a sense of stagnation, and also in a sense of people not wanting the industry itself to change, which is kind of what we see in a lot of franchises nowadays.
Traditionalist versus new people who like. I trust me, I've made people on Twitter think, oh, Marvel is just franchise fluff, no art, no artistry to it.
Yeah. Oh, there's plenty of people like that even on just anywhere in the world. You'll have people everywhere. I've unfortunately met a couple of those people, and they are very vocal about it. Now, that being said, um, we have things like that, but then you really dig down and think about it. Isn't that how the standards changed to begin with not wanting to stick to the traditionalist ways and thus subverting those and thus redefining how things go moving forward, which is in a way how things change and improve, get worse, but it also says something culturally about the era, and it also keeps things moving forward.
Right. And that's sort of my point. Is they're like, it's sort of like the joke I always make people like, Kingdom Hearts is great. Story makes no goddamn sense. I love it though.
Which is because we're
get-
in an era where that's kind of a dominating story structure, especially, and also just for the aesthetic, and just because Nomura loves to. It's just the way Nomura tells it. It's just so fun, and I love watching it unfold.
And is it right to call it bad, or just this is Kingdom Hearts? This is just
Now let me put a caveat in here, Joel, and you and I both need to put this caveat. Now let me say this first and foremost, people. I have had massively different experiences with Kingdom Hearts games over time. I've had many different reads on them as I've gotten older. So a lot of what I talk about on these videos is where I'm at the time I'm at, and it is bound to change as time continues moving, and especially will probably continue to change when 3 comes out.
Right. I mean, and again, this is where like I remember somebody who didn't like Union Black Cover said, Kingdom Hearts is so used to telling non-linear, convoluted stories, but this one was told the worst. I think you think differently of back cover, but that's a different point.
Which is funny because I feel like back cover's format would work better for coding.
I think because back cover was made as a cutscene library first.
Exactly. And I think it inherently works better because it was developed that way.
But it's sort of like, do we judge Kingdom Hearts to Kingdom Hearts standards, or do we judge it to simple story standards?
Now, there's another thing we should also throw in there. When we talk about story standards, there are the people that prefer other narratives as opposed to other narrative techniques.
Right.
That is a thing. I will first and foremost say I am not a big fan of horror movies. I don't dislike them, but I'm not a big fan of the genre. That doesn't mean it doesn't work. I just don't enjoy watching it.
I know, but I think there's basic story standards of 3-act structure, character, go here, makes sense.
Exactly. Well, even then, there are movies that even subvert that I can realize there's something good here. I just don't enjoy watching it. If you know what I mean.
Right, of course.
And that's that's the hard distinction to make, even on an industry level, is how can we what do we do with that, and how do we really use that going forward and apply that to other things that are bound to come and will come as time continues to go on.
Oh, definitely. 3 is going to definitely change our perspectives of Kingdom Hearts quite a bit, especially considering how I think it's going to be really good.
Me too.
Oh, man. Everything about it just, like, really looking up. But again, that's the point I'm trying to make. Is it good, or is it just good by Kingdom Hearts standards? Which is not that high, if you're going to compare it to everything else.
Which is sad, because if we're doing it by Kingdom Hearts standards, then Coded isn't really that good.
I don't think Coded that. I mean, I'm.
So if we're judging it by any of those standards, Coded doesn't really measure up to that, if you know what I mean. Now, a better example would be Distance. That's where I think the conversation kind of you'll get two sides of the spectrum in that matter.
I mean, I think Distance is kind of boring and doesn't really.
Oh, I do too. And if you watch our playthrough of it, you'll hear Joel and I at numerous points say, "Oh yeah, we were bored."
I mean, it has some good moments at the end, and some really heartfelt moments. But like, this is really boring.
It's one of those things when it comes to, and I think the one good rule of thumb when it comes to any story, Joel, was the journey worth the payoff?
I think 2, the journey was worth the payoff. One, essentially, especially because that one is the most linear. Shattered Memories,
Distance,
again, I think is the journey was worth the payoff. At least for me. Birth by Sleep, again, I thought the journey was worth the payoff.
Days, I'd say the same thing.
It's just coded in distance, I'm not sure of.
Yeah, Distance, I'll say I don't think it was worth the payoff. Especially
as a
with
Leonard
Distance, there
Nimoy
wasn't
fan,
much payoff.
as a Leonard Nimoy fan, I thought that was enough payoff for me, but I could see that side of the coin.
Yeah, but I mean, like, is it worth playing an entire game just to get a few cutscenes of dialogue with Nimoy, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I
Especially when you can see Nimoy many more times and do a lot more in Birth by Sleep.
yeah, and coded.
And again, and actually, that's a good thing we make that, Joel, because if we're comparing those standards to other games, then even Kingdom Hearts games don't really meet its standard, which is kind of how you can tell which games kind of fall short where others don't.
That's a good point. I thought coded had a good payoff though. I like some of the ending stuff.
Payoff, yes, worth the journey, getting there. I think that's gonna
Payoff is I think the most important thing, Cole, of a journey. Well, maybe not.
well,
Maybe not always. It's not the destination is the journey, as they say.
well, the thing is like, is the journey worth the payoff? And the payoff may mean something to other people. And remember, Joel, you and I have been with this franchise for a while, so for us, it's going to mean a lot more than as opposed to just newcomers.
I'll say this: that again. That same friend, Katie Corn. I have Katie Corn listening on Twitter. Um, she loved Dream Drop just because she got to see Axel, her favorite character, be redeemed. She got to see Sora essentially say, "Roxas, you should be your own person," and that was enough payoff for them.
Which is but the funny thing about Coda, Joel, is that really the biggest payoffs are not really even tied to the game itself. I mean, yeah, you can say that with Naminé and Roxas, I guess, and maybe Maleficent, but the real big thing that gives Coded any reason why you
I'm
would
talking about
keep
Dream
it.
Drop Distance, though, just so you know.
Oh yeah. But if we're just talking about Coded, the secret ending would be what would draw you in because you want to see what's going to happen next. And of course, you could get that on in the internet nowadays just through a library of cutscenes. So at that point, you're like, well, do I need to go through the journey?
Right, like in 2, yes, you gotta go through the journey.
You
That
have
is
to go through the
worth it.
journey.
Chain of Memories, again, that game's frustrating, but I would totally go through that journey. I thought
Me too.
best to get to those endings moments. One, obviously, that game pretty much keeps you throughout the whole thing. And again, you said Days. Would you think Days is in that category? Is the payoff worth it?
Cutscene wise, probably. Game wise, I couldn't tell you.
I'm just thinking from a story perspective, Cole.
Story perspective, yes. Now for Coded, you know what's funny about Coded, Joel? I just now realized this.
What?
If we're judging it on just a narrative structure, a lot of that payoff isn't informed by the actions of the main character, Datasaur, in the game. And the biggest problem with that, because he's not really relevant. He doesn't really, though his actions don't really inform the story.
I mean, that's how I always approach these games first, Cole. For me, it's all about the narrative before it's about the gameplay.
Which is weird, because I'm like, okay, narratively, it doesn't inform anything. So I'm like, is the payoff worth it?
Yeah, especially considering how superfluous it all is.
Exactly. And again,
it's essentially just getting Mickey. This should have just been Mickey's game.
Exactly. Yeah, this should have been just his game.
They should have just had Mickey be the one you control. Like, he's the one who needs to going through. Like, essentially, this is him needing just to get the information.
It would have worked a hell of a lot better as a phone game too.
Yeah, like play as Mickey. You don't have to be the main.
That's the thing. You market to hell as well.
Yeah.
You know what's sad, Joel?
What?
The more I talk about this game, the more I realize how flawed it really is.
All three of these games are really flawed, Cole. Birth by Sleep is probably the least flawed because it's the most fun and most interesting.
I think Coded is where the flaws come out the most.
Yeah. I mean,
especially because it has that aesthetic coding to kind of shield a lot of those. Or no, it has the aesthetic coding,
Ah, coding. Ha 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 ha.
coding, but it doesn't have really anything else other than that, and thus when the coding kind of just
You know what?
falls
Know what, Cole?
away,
You know what?
those come up.
You almost should think that Birth by Sleep, Days, and Code should all be just one game. I feel like they all are chunks of good things that got too padded out.
Yeah, and I think coded is what it is how that padding damages the most.
And Dream Drop Distance, I guess, to a certain
Oh
extent.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
This actually might be my least favorite out of the three, and I can't believe I'm saying that.
hmm. Well, I guess, yeah, from a narrative standpoint, it probably would be Birth by
Because the
Sleep,
sad part is, I came
Days,
into
and
this
Coded.
thinking, you know what, Joel's going to change my mind on this. I'm going to like this a lot more. He's going to give me a lot of insight. Then you and I start talking. I'm like, um,
I think I like the cutscenes though a bit more than I like the cutscenes for Days. But maybe I'm just a big Sora fan, so and I like the
my
fact
issue with that is like I would agree with you there, except it's on an aesthetic level, but it's not really Sora. You know what I mean?
that's true. Although there's some
So if I
fun moments
try
with him and
use
the genie, which I thought were cute.
Yeah, but
Um,
again, they're done better, unfortunately, in other games. That's the other big issue this game has going for it, is that anything this game does, other games in its franchise have just done better.
See, this is why, at least in my fan fiction, which does go linearly, I feel like this is where you combine things, and this is where like you just tell these some certain of the past moments in flashback
Yeah,
or
because
something.
honestly, this is just because no matter how I look at it, I'm like maybe oh no, but maybe
Because
make
because it's so much padding, and you can
yeah.
combine all three of these games together to tell the story of Roxas, Shion, Ventus, Terra, Aqua, and the fact that they've all been screwed over by
If you're
Master Xehanort and somehow.
Especially if you're going to do the Book of Prophecies element, just tell it in the story like you're telling a fairy tale with these three being the main crux.
Or in a weird way, I feel like all three games and Dream Drop Distance, if you want to make that your ending,
Yeah.
combined is Kingdom Hearts 3.
Yeah, and then what we're getting now would be Kingdom Hearts 4.
Essentially. And even if, and you know, because you could almost see the Shion story fitting in with the fact nobodies have hearts, and even though that's still a bad retcon to a degree, I
You
think
could make me come around on it.
you could
That's the
have
thing. You make
was coded. You could have. I don't know how you fit this in with Birth by Sleep necessarily, but you could have like data flashbacks to the time of the past, like through archives,
yeah.
and then you culminate it with Master Xehanort returning, or with stupid time travel, and then it would have, and then he'd say, you know, I'm back, you suckers. I'm gonna start the Keyblade War now.
I
Then
think what this ultimately comes down to, Joel, is that these games, and especially coded, are hindered just by their narrative structure. Some more, some less than others.
I mean, I've always said. I mean, I said this at the beginning, so we can coded days and
Birth by Sleep.
Birth by Sleep form a trilogy, saying that there's a bigger story going on. When
But
you
it just doesn't have the narrative structure to really make that to make it as hard hitting as it wants to be, as it's clearly trying to be.
I mean, let me ask you this, Cole. Would you have combined these three games and Dream Drop Distance, or would you have combined just?
I would have kept Dream Drop Distance separately because if you really are going to keep time travel, I would have kept that way separately because trying to culminate that, especially into that kind of stuff, I feel like you are compounding a bit too many things for one single
You
story.
know what would have been interesting, Cole? You combined two. You combined these three games, the one I talked about. Dream Drop Distance can stay the same, though it probably would have still sucked. But you made that your chain of memories. Then you got Kingdom Hearts 5. And in a weird way, that forms your next trilogy.
Yeah.
Although I would have liked the 6 because then I could have done my Star Wars reference, but that's okay. Um, but you know, then you kind of have like the 1 through 2 trilogy, and then the 3 through 4 trilogy, the 5 trilogy, and those two kind of become a thing.
It's one of those things where I feel like, again, and now you and I are bringing up just numerous ways to do this, but I think what it ultimately comes down to, just to kind of combine this all together, is that this is not inherently a bad idea. Coded is not inherently a bad idea.
None of these are bad ideas, and they
Exactly.
all have great moments. I love Birth by Sleep still.
Yeah. The problem is that just the way they're told just don't hold them up like they want to be.
And again, it makes you wonder, was that Nomura problem, or was that Square's problem?
Now, Joel and I would probably talk about the connections this game has to others. The problem is, if we did that now, I feel like there wouldn't be much to say. And honestly, we would probably get more mileage out of them talking more about them in just other videos that are more unstructured, because we're still kind of going with this from Coded, but at the moment we have to talk about the Book of Prophecy thing, we'd have to bring Union Cross into the mix, which we have not talked about yet.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, is the padding Square's problem,
exactly.
Or Nomura's problem, and I want to put the blame more on Square, quite honestly.
I do too, because honestly, I feel like if going by 2, I feel like if Nomura gotten his wish, I think Birth by Sleep would have been 3.
I think you would have seen a combination of all 3 of these games, because I feel like he would have continued with Sora as the main character and kind of have Sora discovered all this weirdness in flashback or something. That's just me. I think. Who knows? Nomura's still still a strange storyteller. But 2, while I still have my problems, and I feel like we're just backtracking, we're talking about 2. But you can see that I feel like 2's big hindrance is just the technology wasn't there.
Yeah.
And 3's looking like it's got
2 was too overly ambitious.
And well, 3's looking like it's got the technology to live up to the ambition.
Yeah.
But, this is not about 2, this is about Coded, and I think we've run out of things to say about Coded.
Yeah, I think we've thoroughly trashed Coded.
You know what's weird, Cole, though? I feel like we've trashed these games. I feel like we've grown softer on Nomura.
Yeah, because the more I see it, I'm like, the more I've talked about this, I'm like, a lot of this does not seem like things Nomura would have outright done, especially going by 1, Chain of Memories, and 2 alone, or at least not without someone else telling him to do some of these things.
Exactly. Well, do you think Chain of Memories was also something Nomura wanted to do?
Considering it was a Game Boy game, I would imagine.
It works somewhat, though, so it's not like...
It works, but I don't know if that was inherently a decision he wanted to do.
Yeah, so 3's looking like something he wants to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's weird. Like, we used to bash Nomura so hard when we were younger. And now...
And believe me when I say, people, I still to this day have a love-hate relationship with Nomura, and he still has made a lot of really, really bizarre and stupid decisions, not just in Kingdom Hearts, but in other franchises that I really don't like. That being said, when he does great work, I really love it. When he does stupid stuff, that's when he gets on my nerves.
Right. But I feel like we've come around to saying, I feel like we stopped blaming him for everything. I feel like we realized some of his hands were just tied to the hardships of business,
especially with how the industry's been nowadays. A lot of the publishers nowadays, especially Square, is getting caught doing really, really stupid decisions.
Yeah,
and that makes kind of more this stuff like, well, what if it wasn't just Nomura doing all of this?
Yeah, like, geez, Nomura, you're padding out this game. Like, what if this isn't your fault? What if you're being forced to do this?
Yeah.
But with that being said, that's our Coded discussion. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, as always.
Don't worry. We'll be back.
We'll be back, but I'm not done giving out my spiel. Be on the lookout for future critical runs. I am on level, as of now, like 36, 37. We might do something soon. At the very least, we could at least try to get through Twilight Town before we go to Hollow Bastion. That's when we're going to need to be ready. I will need to be, at least. Look forward to a back cover discussion.
As well as the last the
next year.
last canon video for leading up to 3, which will be the 2.8 prologue video.
Right. Oh, oh, I just realized I had my Skype on. Hey, that's weird. My phone, that's okay. I'm good. And, well, until next time, may your heart be your guiding key. Bye.